So for the asynchronous portion of class today, we're going to be covering neurotransmitters and the nervous system. I'm going to try to keep this as quick as possible. There's not an assignment that goes along with it. All you have to do is just listen and take notes. So for the first part of class, we talked about how neurons communicate, neurotransmission. We talked about the electrical signal, the action potential within the neuron, and then we talked about the chemical communication between neurons using certain chemicals called neurotransmitters. Neurotransmitters are the chemical messengers within the nervous system. Okay? They send different messages to certain types of neurons, telling them to act in certain ways, which then in turn influences our behavior and thought processes. They are very fast acting, but they also go away really quickly. As we talked about, they are released from the terminal buttons, the axon terminals. They cross the synaptic gap, and then they bind at the receptor site on the dendrite, which then triggers an action potential in the receiving or postsynaptic neuron. There are 7 of these that you need to know for this class, and what happens when there's too much of it, and what happens when there's not enough of it. Okay, so there is also a chart that goes along with this for your viewing pleasure. So the first one, the one that is the most prevalent in our brain and in our body, is what is called acetylcholine. Okay, you will also see this abbreviated as ACH. Acetylcholine plays a big role in memories, retrieving memories, forming memories, and then also in muscle contractions, specifically with activating muscles. These neurons that are in the peripheral nervous system communicate directly with muscles, telling them what to do. Too much of acetylcholine can lead to muscle paralysis. You can see this with things like sarin gas, which basically causes extreme muscle contractions, leading to muscle paralysis and asphyxiation or suffocating. Too little of it has been linked to Alzheimer's disease, the disease in which you lose the ability to retrieve memories. So you got to know what they are associated with and what too much or too little can do. Okay, I added in these 2-minute neuroscience videos for all of them. If you want to watch them, that's great. I will say that they are really good, but sometimes they put in, there's too much information in them with stuff that you don't necessarily need to know for this class. The next one is serotonin. Serotonin is mainly involved in mood regulation, hunger, and then arousal, meaning sleep and wakefulness. Okay, it plays a big role in hunger. 90% of the serotonin in our body is produced in our gastrointestinal tract. Too much of it, I doubt you'd be asked about this, can lead to weight gain, which is why a lot of times people who take antidepressants, such as Prozac, which is what's called an SSRI, a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, tend to gain weight. The main thing that you need to associate with serotonin, too little of it, has been linked to depression, which is why antidepressant medications stimulate the production of serotonin. Dopamine is mostly associated with reward, with seeking out rewards, and motivation and pleasure. Okay, us determining whether or not we are motivated to do something. Okay, this is why it is heavily associated with drug addiction and producing a rewarding feeling in the brain. Okay, part of the brain, what is called the reward pathway, produces the vast majority of our dopamine. The other thing that it's associated with is motor control and movement, specifically coordinating your movement and making sure that our movements are fluid. Too much of it has been associated with the psychotic disorder known as schizophrenia, specifically the hallucinations associated with schizophrenia. Too little of it has been linked to Parkinson's disease, which causes tremors in your hands. Okay, there's the motor control, and then ADHD, which is why people with ADHD seek out things that are rewarding to the brain and have a hard time focusing a lot of the time. Norepinephrine is associated with alertness and arousal, specifically what's called our fight or flight response. Okay, so keeping us awake, keeping us going. If we're in a stressful situation, our brain will release norepinephrine to help us focus. It is similar to adrenaline, except for the fact that adrenaline is in the endocrine system and is a hormone. Norepinephrine is in the nervous system and it is a neurotransmitter. Too much of it can cause stress and possibly has been associated with the manic phase of bipolar disorder. Too little of it has been associated with depression, although I want you to mainly associate serotonin with depression. Endorphins, the morphine within, okay, this is the body's natural painkiller. It is released when we are put in any sort of painful situation. High levels of it are associated with things such as a runner's high, which runners often get when they've been running for a while and it hurts for a bit. Then all of a sudden it kind of feels like they're floating a little bit. That's because of the release of endorphins. It's also why you oftentimes, if you get hurt playing a sport, you won't necessarily feel pain from it until later on. Low levels are associated with pain, specifically the drug that is mostly associated with it are opiates such as heroin. Withdrawal from those drugs, which is due to a low levels of endorphins, is extremely painful. GABA, gamma-aminobutyric acid, is the brain's main inhibitory neurotransmitter. What that means is it slows down the brain. Okay, it stops other neurons from firing. This is produced when we're going to sleep. Okay, cause sleepiness. All right, so a lot of it can cause sleepiness. Too little of it is associated with insomnia and seizures. One of the main drug that produces GABA is alcohol, which is why alcohol limits your inhibitions, makes you more likely to do something that you wouldn't do when you're not drunk, and it tends to make us tired. And then finally, glutamate. Glutamate is the opposite. It is what's called an excitatory neurotransmitter. It speeds up the brain. It is heavily associated with memory formation. We'll talk more about this later on in the course. And high levels of it have been associated with seizures, migraines, and anxiety. So I know those quick, but those are the 7 neurotransmitters that you need to know for this class. If I were you, I would maybe make note cards or at least be studying the chart that I've given you. Now, finally, what we need to talk about is putting all of this together, all these neurons that we've talked about, these neurotransmitters, the big picture, what is called the nervous system. The nervous system is a network of neurons and nerves that goes from the brain, spinal cord, all the way out to your limbs, to your glands, to your organs, to your muscles, basically controlling the actions of all of those parts of your body. There are two different subsections of the nervous system. I'm going to start from the outside. The peripheral nervous system is all of the nerves that extend off of the spinal cord. Okay, so the spinal cord has all these nerves that go to your arms, to your legs, to your glands, to your organs, okay, to your face, all of these different things. These are part of the peripheral nervous system. You know what periphery means? The periphery is the outside. You can see here, okay, all of these that are coming off are part of the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is made up of two different types of neurons. Sensory neurons, or what are also called afferent neurons, are what carry information from the body back up to the spinal cord to be perceived by the brain. Okay, they carry it from tissues, from muscles, from glands, from sensory receptors in the skin, all the way up to the brain. So anytime you touch something, okay, and you're able to feel it, that's the result of these sensory or afferent neurons. Motor neurons, on the other hand, carry messages from the spinal cord and brain out to the rest of the body, out to your muscles, telling them to move, out to your glands, telling them to produce to secrete a hormone, out to your organs, telling them what they need to do. So these are going from sensory or outside to inside. Sensation, motor neurons are inside to outside. Motor or movement. A way that you can remember this, motor neurons are also called efferent neurons, sorry. Way that you can remember these two scientific terms that go along with them, okay, because the AP exam loves to ask about these. Same. Sensory afferent, motor efferent. Sorry, looking for something. Now, there are two parts to the peripheral nervous system. There's what's called the somatic nervous system. Soma, word again, that means body. Okay, this is the part of the somatic nervous system the part of the peripheral nervous system that controls voluntary movements. So anytime you move on your own, whether it's to pick up a pencil or walk or whatnot, okay, this is due to these mostly motor neurons sending signals out to the muscles and glands and to your skeletal system from the spinal cord. The somatic nervous system is voluntary movement, anything you do on your own accord. The autonomic nervous system, it controls automatic functions in the body. Okay, so things that you don't have any control over, things that just happen automatically, like our heartbeat and our body temperature, okay, bowel movements, all these different things are part of the autonomic nervous system. Now, to complicate this a little bit more, the autonomic nervous system is split into two subcategories as well. So all of these, there's the peripheral nervous system. The peripheral nervous system has the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. And then the autonomic nervous system has what's called the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system is the opposite of what it sounds like. It is our fight or flight system. So, and just so we know, these two systems operate together. They help us to maintain balance, internal balance, or what is called homeostasis. Sympathetic nervous system is fight or flight. It's the part of the nervous system that expends energy and activates when we are in a stressful, high intensity, fun, whatever it is, situation. Okay, way that you can remember this is sympathetic, stress. Okay, they both, that is just a little mnemonic to help you remember it. One of the neurotransmitters that we just talked about, norepinephrine, heavily involved in this. And as is adrenaline. All right, some of the fight or flight responses, it obviously automatically accelerates your heartbeat. That's to get more blood pumping. Your breathing's going to increase oxygen levels. It dilates your pupils, which means it makes them bigger. This helps you to be able to see more clearly. Your eyes can bring in more light when your pupils are dilated. Think about if you've ever had your pupils dilated at an eye appointment. When you go outside, you can't see anything. It's too bright. That's because your eyes are bringing in way more light than they're used to. The other thing that it does is it takes away blood flow from non-essential organs and non-essential functions, which is why it also slows down your digestion. We don't necessarily need to be digesting the food we just ate if we're being chased by a bear. Now, one of the other things it might do is it might just release everything at once, which is why sometimes people pee their pants when they get really scared. It slows down digestion because it doesn't need to use that energy there right then. So if you think about if you play a sport, most of the time you're probably gonna have to go to the bathroom, number two, before playing the game, but then usually we don't have to go to the bathroom during it. That's because your sympathetic nervous system is activated while you're playing a sport. But then usually what's gonna happen is hour or so after you're done, you've calmed down, you probably have to go to the bathroom again, okay? Because it's not worried about digestion. It's also not worried about sexual arousal, okay? It's rare for people to get sexually aroused in fight or flight situations, unless you're like somebody like Ted Bundy. All right, so sympathetic nervous system is the stress nervous system. It's activated to put us on alert. The parasympathetic nervous system is the opposite. It's called rest and digest, or also feed and breed. This is part of the nervous system that conserves energy and calms us down. Okay, the way you can maybe remember this is it's peaceful, or you're in paradise. Okay, this is what is good. Like our parasympathetic nervous system and sympathetic nervous system work together to keep us at homeostasis so that we just don't fall asleep, but we're not too stressed out all the time. People who have anxiety, their sympathetic nervous system is activated more often than it should be. Okay, but this is also what's going to slow us down after a stressful event. The effects of it, your heart rate and breathing slow down, your pupils constrict, all right? And your digestion is going to speed up. This is why after you eat, and you might get tired after you eat, it's because your parasympathetic nervous system is activated to help you digest the food that you just ate. Okay, so it's a lot of things that don't require immediate attention. This is also why some of you might cry after being stressed out. Crying is a parasympathetic reaction that helps calm us down. Okay, another way to remember it, if you jump out of a plane, your sympathetic nervous system is going to be activated because it's stressful. But then once the parachute comes out, this might help some of you, may not, I don't know. Once the parachute comes out, you're going to calm down, okay? Because you know that you're not going to fall to your death. Parachute, all right? It like slows down the sympathetic nervous system. So those are the two different parts of the autonomic nervous system. Just know what each one of them does. And really, their effects are kind of the opposite of each other. Okay, here are just a couple of diagrams here. Lastly, trying to be as quick as possible. The central nervous system is the brain and the spinal cord. Okay, that's all it is. This is what receives messages from the body, and it sends messages out to the peripheral nervous system. So it receives messages from the from the peripheral nervous system, and it sends messages out to the peripheral nervous system. Okay, it's the decision maker. This is what's in charge of everything. Without our brain and spinal cord, none of what we do would be possible. Also abbreviated the CNS. Okay, and in the peripheral nervous system is made up of neurons called interneurons. Interneurons facilitate communication between sensory neurons, the spinal cord in the brain, and motor neurons in the spinal cord in the brain. Interneurons are only found in the CNS. Okay, they are only found in the CNS. They communicate out with motor neurons, and they send information from sensory neurons to the spinal cord and the brain. All right. Lastly, reflexes are inborn responses, automatic responses to something sensory in our environment. There is no brain involvement in reflexes. It is all spinal cord, what is called a reflex arc in the spinal cord. Okay, so if you have questions, I'm available for morning tutoring, afternoon tutoring. I know that was a lot in a short period of time, but it's important that we get through it. All right, so there you go. Have a good rest of the day. By the way, just to reiterate, there will be a quiz on all of the nervous system information next class. Multiple choice, okay, but there will be a quiz. You'll get multiple attempts on it, but there will be a quiz on neurons, neural communication, neurotransmitters, and the nervous system. All right.